Szanowni Państwo, witamy wszystkich bardzo serdecznie.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome at the third press conference, the last conference today devoted to local government elections. With us we have Deputy Head of the National Electoral Commission, Judge Marciniak, member of the Commission, Judge Strzelczyk, member of the Commission, Judge Mładanowicz, and Secretary of the Commission and Head of the National Election Office, Ms. Pietrzak. Over to you, Madam. Sir. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We will now present to you the announcement of the National Electoral Commission on partial unofficial results of the elections as of 5:45, based on data received electronically on the election results from 113,542 protocols approved by territorial election commissions out of the total number of expected 117,810 protocols. The National Electoral Commission informs you as following. When it comes to first partial unofficial results of elections in the elections for reeves, mayors and presidents of cities, out of the total number of 2,477 elected reeves, mayors and presidents of cities, results were determined in the case of 2,370 municipalities and towns. Just to remind you, when it comes to the data from 11:30 a.m., then we had 90,000 protocols, i.e. we have around 24,000 more. We are still missing 4,500 protocols. I should also emphasize that when it comes to elections for municipalities and towns, at 11:30 we had protocols from 1,765 reeves mayors. So right now it's 2,377. The turnout was very high, 54.60%. Partial results are presented here, and let me emphasize that the first figure, the number of people entitled to vote, was 28,899,000, and almost 30 million were entitled to vote. So we are missing data and protocols related to around 1 million people. Let's still say that the turnout is very high. It's higher than we forecast. When it comes to partial and official results for the municipality councils, the number of people eligible to vote was 27, almost 28 million. So again, we are around 2 million short. Number of valid ballot papers over 15 million, and as of now, the turnout is 54.85%. I.e. again, it's above 54%, almost 55%. Just to remind you, during the last local government elections, it was 47.4%, which means that we are almost 7 percentage point higher. 1 percentage point is 300,000 people, so we might say that over 2 million people more voted this time than during the last elections. When it comes to the next item, out of the total number of 18 districts of the capital city of Warsaw, the results of elections were determined in 3 district councils. So this means that there's some progress. During the previous conference, we didn't have any official data. When it comes to partial unofficial results of the elections for district councils, out of the total number of 314 districts, we have results in 175 councils, which means that we are a bit higher. At 11:30, we had protocols from 17 councils only. And last but not least, the last item, partial and official results in the elections for provincial assemblies. We, as of now, have no results in any of the assemblies, but some data related to people eligible to vote is there. We had almost 28 million people, and the number of valid ballot papers over 15 million. The turnout is again above 54%. The split will be known once we have the provincial protocols from all district commissions. Thank you very much, sir. And again, here I have some latest news. Opolskie province completed the works. Right now, the main point is to verify the data and to announce the results for the Provincial Assembly in the Opolskie province. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the room right now? Kamil Krupa, Polish TV. What about the districts of Warsaw? Do you have data which districts these were? And second of all, what's the difficulty about announcing the results in provincial assemblies? Do we simply have to have all data from election commissioners? What does it look like in practice? Well, when it comes to provincial assemblies, we need to get all protocols from all district commissions. And unfortunately, that's about the continuity. We have municipal councils, district councils, provincial assemblies. Just to remind you, we have 28,000, almost 28,000 such commissions. Mazovian province, 4,500 commissions, and that means that when it comes to the works, this will be a much greater effort. The same applies to elections for districts of Warsaw. Let me emphasize once again that we have a much higher number of voters who cast their votes in these elections. Indeed, this is a very significant increase. Therefore, it was a very good idea to have commissions for voting and commissions for counting the votes, but still a lot of effort is needed on the part of members of the commissions who are responsible for counting the votes in district commissions. It's hard for me to say, actually. Unofficially, we know that these are 3 districts of Warsaw. Next question, please. The Radio Information Agency. Good afternoon, Karol Dagmaros, Polish Radio. Can you give us some information about the big cities and results there? We know, based on the municipal commissions, that some cities already know it. And what about Warsaw? On the website of the National Electoral Commission, we read that in some commissions the turnout was 100%. There are some discrepancies related to different number of voters in the register and the number of people eligible to vote. Were there really such cases, such mistakes that occurred in the works of the Commission? Well, as for the elections for reeves, mayors and presidents, when it comes to reeves and mayors, the municipalities are not that big. The biggest problem is with presidents of cities, that we have a higher number of commissions. Let me point out that we still miss around 600 municipalities, or towns to be specific, including the biggest cities in Poland. That's why before coming here, I went to the website of the National Electoral Commission, where we have the visualization. And unfortunately, when it comes to bigger cities, the official results are not yet there on the website of the Commission. I think this matter requires time. I think, however, that with a huge effort on the part of the members of the Commission who are responsible for counting the votes, soon in the upcoming hours, or possibly tomorrow in the morning, we will have at least some results there. As regards the municipality councils, we had some information about 100% turnout. Well, I think my colleague will explain that. In the case of a handful of locations, handful of commissions in Warsaw that presented information about 100% turnout, the protocols were returned to the commissions to be double-checked, to be double verified. We are not assuming that it's something possible to have a 100% turnout. I think there was a mistake when it comes to the number of people eligible to vote or the number of voters who came to the polling station. This simply has to be verified. I'm sure there was no 100% turnout. There was no reserves that we had to release. We had a 10% reserve that stayed in the office. I mean, the reserve of the number of ballot papers. We didn't release it, so we are certain that the turnout was not 100%. There must have been some mistake, so that's why we're double-checking the protocols once again. Thank you very much, Superstacja. Good afternoon, Artur Molenda. I wanted to delve into details when it comes to these irregularities. So looking at the reports from the commissions and the protocols, I got struck by the commission number 677 and the number of people eligible to vote, 918. 917 took the ballot papers and 937 ballot papers were taken out from the ballot box. Well, it's hard for me to reflect upon it, to comment on this specific case. As I said before, it is natural, it can happen that there is a range of mistakes. Some are spotted by our IT specialists here who have access to the system. And Poland-wide, they were able to spot some errors of that kind, information that right away is incorrect. Normally, it's a typo. In this case, I don't know whether it was a mistake typo or whether that really happened. If it did, then it would definitely be explained, but it's hard for me to comment on a specific case. How will that be explained? What do you mean? Well, the fact that we had more ballot papers taken out from the ballot box than the number of people who are eligible to vote, well, it all depends on a specific case. So really, it's hard for me to speak in general, in some overarching terms. Either the Commission will be able to justify it somehow or not. If there were too many ballot papers, more than the number of people, then it's an irregularity, it's incorrect. Such results are incorrect with the principle of logical thinking and mathematics. It does require explanation, and I'm sure the District Commission should be the first to explain that in the protocol. That's impossible for something like that to happen in reality. There are special places, special gaps in the protocol for the comments and explanations of all irregularities or discrepancies in data. Data should be correct. The number of ballot papers and the number of voters, each such irregularity needs to be verified. Well, we are all human beings. Maybe from time to time, members of the Commission are simply too tired. And that's my second question. How many people from the commissions resigned from working in the Commission once the voting was completed? Do you have such data? Do you have such information? No, we don't have any such information. The heads of commissions appoint the members of the Commission on an ongoing basis. We had information about individual cases in which people, during the counting of the votes or after the votes were counted, decided to resign, but these were singular cases in which people would give up, would resign, and then it was necessary to complement the composition of the panel. Next question, Małgorzata Mielcarek, TVN24. I wanted to ask about something that already sparked some doubts, and we had an official question from the plenipotentiary for elections of the law and order, prolongation of voting due to queues that were present before the polling stations. The question is whether this was an extraordinary situation or maybe the polling stations should have been closed at 9 p.m. Well, there was no prolongation of the voting time. The voting ended at 9 p.m. That's a clarification that I should make. Voting may be prolonged if the District Commission decides to do so and if it's justified through some circumstances. In the case of yesterday's evening in Warsaw, people who came to the polling station before 9 And this results clearly from the electoral code. If you arrive at a polling station before it is closed, you have to have the right to vote. The people came to the polling station before 9 p.m., but due to technical reasons and constraints, they were not able to enter the polling stations. The polling stations were too small, the number of people was too high, and some members simply had to queue. They were standing in the queue to define precisely when the last person came to the polling station, and only these people were allowed to vote who came to the polling station before 9. And my second question, what about Olsztyn? The commissioner is to be Mariusz Stachowiak, who is right now also a judge in one of the candidates' cases. Doesn't that awake any doubts as for impact on the decision of the commissioner? Maybe the commissioner might be accused of being partial. When it comes to commissioners, 100 were appointed and around 50 are judges from different courts. If a situation like that occurs, namely a complaint was lodged to the decision of a commissioner, then naturally the commissioner cannot be in the adjudicating panel. But that does not mean that the person cannot work in a different court. There's no obstacle to that. Judges will only follow the law and justice, and I'm sure that the judge cannot adjudicate in the adjudicating panel if the complaint relates to the decision of the commissioner. Once again, superstacja. Again, it keeps bugging me when I asked you about the fact that there were more ballot papers taken up from the ballot box than the number of people eligible to vote. The question has already been asked, sir, but I didn't get an answer. How will that be verified since the protocol was already submitted and there is a no comments comment there? Well, let me remind you, we had a range of protocols from Warsaw, because I know that we were talking about Warsaw, which had some discrepancies and irregularities, and they were returned to be verified, to be corrected. And if indeed a situation like that occurs, there is a mistake and there is no justification, then the protocol is returned and the Commission has to reanalyze the case. And this will be updated on an ongoing basis on the website of the National Electoral Commission, because, you know, an erroneous protocol may be presented on your website. I feel much better right now. I'm much less concerned. And the radio information agency, Przemysław Lis, Polish Radio, when can we expect the official result? Tomorrow, Wednesday, or still Thursday? As of now, what does it look like? Well, let me quote what Judge Kozlewicz said. It's not the majority who decides. It's just the single commission that is late. If we get the last protocol on Wednesday or on Thursday, then the final results will only be announced once we have all the protocols approved in the system. And that applies to all protocols. We are still missing 4,500 protocols. Thank you very much for your participation. I'd like to thank the National Electoral Commission. This was the last conference today. The next one will be scheduled for 3 p.m. tomorrow. Thank you very much indeed.